It's in your eyes, in your walk. Don't confuse phlegm. In the way your shoulders slump just a little more than they used to. Life has a way of piling things on you, one layer at a time. Maybe it started with stress at work, then trouble at home, then health problems. Don't confuse movement. Or just that lingering ache of feeling like nothing is going the way it should. Fuse movement, and somewhere in the middle of it all, you forgot what it feels like to be light, to breathe easy, to laugh without it feeling forced. That's not weakness. It's being human. There's this illusion in the world today that strength means always being on, always having it together, never showing your cracks. But the truth is, don't fuse me. The strongest people are the ones still standing when they have every reason to fall. The ones who cry in secret but still show up. The ones who are silently fighting battles nobody sees. Don't confuse movement. That kind of tired isn't just physical. It's soul deep. And you know what? God sees that. He sees the nights when you lie awake, staring at the ceiling, asking yourself, if you're going to make it through this season. He sees the moments when you're smiling on the outside, but crumbling inside. He hears the words you're too exhausted to say, and understands the prayers you can't even form. You're not invisible. Your exhaustion is not overlooked. Government. Heaven is not deaf to your pain. Some of the people around you don't get it. Don't confuse movement. They think you're fine because you're still functioning. But functioning doesn't mean flourishing. You can be working, parenting, serving, smiling, and still be tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind of tired that comes from carrying too much for too long. And maybe you've even asked God, why does this feel so heavy? Why am I still in this place? But I need you to understand this, or you're not carrying it alone. Even in this, God is near. Even in this awareness, his strength is being perfected. See, the tiredness you feel is not a sign that God has left. It's a sign that you've been carrying too much without him. Don't confuse movement. You were never meant to do it all in your own strength. And sometimes it takes hitting that wall of exhaustion for us to finally reach out and say, God, I need you. That's not failure. That's faith. We confuse movement because when you reach the end of yourself, that's where God begins. When you drop to your knees, not because you want to confuse movement, but because you can't stand anymore, that's the most powerful place you be. Confuse, that's where the breakthrough begins. Confuse movement. That's where peace starts to seep in. That's where strength is renewed. So yes, you're tired, but you're also still breathing. Your movement, you're still fighting. And that means hope is still alive. Don't confuse movement. Don't let your exhaustion trick you into believing you're finished. Movement. Don't let the weight of this moment make you forget that God is still writing your story. You're not done yet. He's not done. So take a breath. Just one. Close your eyes if you need to. Let go. Even just a little. Not because the problems are gone. Don't confuse movement. But because you've remembered that you don't have to solve them alone. That's where it starts. Right there. In that moment of surrender. Because in your tiredness, even when your hands are too weak to hold on, God is still holding you. And he's not letting go. When you're tired, really tired, your instinct might be to retreat, to isolate, to pull away from everything and everyone, including God, because somewhere deep inside, you start to believe that if he hasn't fixed it by now, maybe he's not listening. Maybe he's not even there. But the truth is, that's exactly when you need him most. That's when you need to pray, not as a last resort, but as your first response. Prayer isn't some formal ritual. It's not about sounding right or saying the perfect words. It's about being real. It's about sitting in your silence and letting your heart speak. Even if all you can whisper is, "Help me," that's enough. You don't have to be strong in prayer. You just have to be honest. God doesn't need fancy. He wants authentic. He's not impressed by long speeches. He's moved by raw surrender. When you're at your lowest, prayer becomes oxygen. Don't fuse movement. It's the thing that keeps your soul breathing when everything else feels suffocating. Fuse movement. It's the moment you choose to lean not on your own understanding, but on the one who holds all understanding. Don't confuse movement, because there will be times when no one around you will have the right words. People will mean, but their comfort won't go deep enough. Don't confuse movement. Their advice won't reach the place where your pain is living, but prayer will. God will. Sometimes movement, you may feel like your prayers are bouncing off the ceiling, like you're talking to the air. But faith says, even if I don't feel it, I still believe He hears me. That's the power of prayer. It doesn't always change your circumstances immediately, but it begins to change you. It shifts the weight from your shoulders onto His. And slowly, something inside begins to breathe again. Fuse. There's a kind of peace that doesn't make sense. That comes when you pour your heart out and to trust that God is working even when you can't see it. Even when you can't see it. That peace doesn't come from control. It comes from letting go. It comes from praying, God, I don't know what to do next. Don't fuse movement. But I'm giving it to you. And He meets you right there. In the brokenness, in the confusion, in the waiting. Prayer is your lifeline. It's the place where tired souls find rest and weary hearts strength. It's not a ritual. It's a rescue. And the beautiful part is you don't have to wait for the perfect time or setting. Don't confuse movement. You can pray in the car, in the shower, sitting at your desk, or lying awake at night. He's always listening, always near. And he never grows tired of your voice. Confused movement. Sometimes the most powerful prayers are the quietest ones. The ones where you just sit in his presence and say nothing. Because prayer isn't just about talking. It's about listening. It's about letting your spirit connect with something bigger than the storm around you. And in that quiet space, you begin to remember who you are. And more importantly, whose you are. So when the weight gets too heavy and your soul starts to shake under the pressure, don't shut down, don't disconnect, or pray, or not because you have all the answers, but because you know the one who does. Not because you're strong, but because you need strength. Not because you're perfect, but because you know your love. He's not waiting for you to get it together. He's waiting for you to come to him just as you are. Tired, broken, empty. Don't confuse movement. That's where the healing begins. Don't confuse movement. That's where the strength starts to rise again. And that's where your comeback is born. Not in the noise, but in the quiet, honest place of prayer. After you've poured your heart out in prayer, after the tears and the surrender, comes the part most people struggle with. Waiting. And not just waiting, but waiting well. Because waiting isn't easy, especially when you're tired, when everything in you wants to move, to fix, to see change right now. But the truth is confusement. To few, just because you don't see anything happening doesn't mean nothing is. We live in a world that celebrates speed, fast results, instant answers, quick fixes. But God doesn't operate on our clock. He moves with purpose, not pressure. And sometimes his greatest work is done in the stillness, in the unseen, in the in-between. That space between the prayer and the promise is not wasted time. Movement. It's a sacred process. You might feel like you're stuck, like nothing's moving. But waiting is not being stuck. It's being held. Held by grace, by purpose, by a timing that's higher than yours. And it's in that holding place where God starts to shape things in you that you didn't even know needed shaping. Things like patience, character, resilience, because the waiting room of life is not punishment. It's preparation. You see, God's delay is never his denial. Confuse movement. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't. But God loves you too much to give you something you're not ready for. So he waits. He waits. He waits until the conditions are right, not just around you, but inside you. Because sometimes the thing you're praying for would crush you if it came too soon. And that's not a no. It's mercy. Waiting also strips away the illusion that we're in control. It humbles us. It reminds us that we're not the author of the story. We're the ones learning to trust the author. And that trust grows in silence. It grows when heaven seems quiet, but your heart still whispers, I believe. The hardest part about waiting is that it often feels lonely. You start to wonder if God forgot about you, if he's too busy, if you missed your moment. But listen, God doesn't forget his children. He's not distracted. He's intentional. Every second of your waiting is accounted for. Every silent night, every unanswered question, every not yet has a reason. And even if you don't see it now, one day you will. Because while you wait, he's working. He's moving pieces you can't see. He's opening doors you haven't even walked toward yet. He's changing hearts, redirecting paths, setting the stage. So when the time comes, everything will fall into place in a way that only God could arrange, could arrange, and you'll look back and say, that meant. That's why I had to wait. So don't rush the season you're in. Don't try to escape it because it's uncomfortable. There's gold in the waiting if you're willing to see it. Growth. You can't get any other way. Dre, strength that can't be taught, only built. And peace, not from getting what you want, but from knowing that God's timing is always better than yours. Yes, the waiting is hard, but it's holy. It's where your faith becomes more than a word. It becomes a lifestyle. It's where your roots go deep. Movement, where your dependence on God becomes your foundation. And it's in that place, that quiet, stretching place, fuse movement, where trust begins to rise like the dawn. So don't despise the wait. Embrace it, lean into it, and remember, while you wait, you are not abandoned. You are not forgotten. You are being paired for what you prayed for. And when it comes, you'll know it wasn't late. It was right on time. Trust. That's the hardest part, isn't it? After you've prayed, after you've waited, and nothing has shifted the way you thought it would. What's left? Trust is what stands in the gap between your request and God's response. It's not passive. It's not pretending like everything's fine. It's waking up every day still unsure, still tired, but saying, God, I'm going to believe you anyway. It's easy to trust when the doors open, when the phone rings, when the breakthrough happens, right on schedule. But what about when it doesn't? What about when the silence stretches on and life keeps throwing punches? That's where real trust begins. It doesn't begin in comfort. It begins in uncertainty. It begins when your emotions are screaming thing and your faith chooses. And your faith chooses to believe another. Trust is not about knowing the outcome. Don't confuse movement. It's about knowing the character of the one who holds the outcome. It's saying, I don't understand what you're doing, God, but I know you. I know you are good. I know you are faithful. I know you haven't brought me this far just to leave me here. And sometimes that's all you can say. Sometimes that's all the strength you have left. Confused movement, but that's enough. There are moments when your trust won't look strong. It won't look loud. It'll look like you getting out of bed when everything in you wants to stay under the covers. It'll look like you showing up, still waiting, still hurting, but still choosing not to walk away from God. That quiet, stubborn faith. That's what moves mountains. You're not always going to feel it. There will be days when doubt knocks louder than belief. But that's not failure. That's human. Don't confuse movement. God isn't asking you to have perfect trust. He's asking you to bring the trust you have and let him grow it, to give him your mustard seed and watch what he can do with it. Sometimes trust is choosing to believe that the no was protection. That the closed door wasn't rejection. It was redirection. Sometimes it's looking at everything that's falling apart and believing that God is still building something out of the rubble. That's trust. It's the decision to keep walking even when the path disappears under your feet. And the truth is trusting God will sometimes break your heart because his plan won't always match your preference. But even then, he is near. Even then, he's working all things together for your good. Not all things will be good, but they will be worked together for good. You don't have to see the whole picture to take the next step. You just need to trust the one who holds it. One step, one prayer, one moment at a time. That's how trust is built. That's how it becomes your anchor when the winds rise and your strength fades. Confused movement. And when the breakthrough finally comes, because it will, you'll understand. Don't confuse movement. You'll see how God was protecting you, strengthening you, preparing you. You'll see how every delay, every detour, every disappointment shaped something in you that couldn't have been formed any other way. And your trust, once fragile, will now be unshakable. So keep trusting. Not because you see the answer, but because you know the one who's writing it. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Because when everything else gives way, trust in God is what will hold you steady. Even tired, even unsure, even in the waiting. You are never outside of his plan. Keep trusting. He's not finished. Movement. When you're tired, when you've prayed, don't confuse movement. When you've waited and trusted, but feel like you're standing in the same place, it's easy to start believing that your faith isn't working. That maybe you missed something. That maybe God skipped over you. But let me tell you something powerful. Just because you don't feel strong doesn't mean you're not growing up. Growth doesn't always come with signs and applause. Sometimes growth is silent. It's happening beneath the surface where nobody sees. You can't always measure spiritual progress by visible results. God doesn't always wasn't always you what he's building while he's building it. Don't confuse movement. He's deepening your roots before he shows you the fruit. And that means, yes, there will be seasons when you don't feel anything. No big emotions. No loud answers. Just quiet endurance. But even in that stillness, something is happening. You are becoming stronger, wiser, more anchored. That kind of growth only comes from staying, not rushing ahead, not giving up, just staying planted in faith. Even your feelings are screaming for escape. Because feelings are temporary. But faith is a decision. a commitment. And when you remain rooted in God, despite your wariness, that's when real transformation begins. Maybe you don't recognize it yet. Confused movement. But you're not the same person you were when this season started. Confused movement. You've endured more than you thought you could. Don't confuse. You've held on when it would have been easier to walk away. You've kept your heart open to God when you had every reason to shut it down. Movement, that's growth. That's strength. That's faith in motion. And here's the truth. God often builds us in quiet spaces. He matures us in the silence, in the waiting, in the long, slow days that don't seem to matter, but they do. Every tear, every prayer, every moment you didn't quit, it matters. And God doesn't waste any of it. You see, we want the fruit without the root. Movement, we want the blessing without the stretching. Confused movement. But God knows that deep roots are what keep you standing when the storms come. And if this season is deepening your roots, then it's not a loss. It's preparation. He's building you to outlast what's coming next. He's training you for the weight of the very blessing you've been asking for. Confused movement. And maybe that's why it hasn't come yet. Because when the blessing arrives, it won't just be for your comfort. It'll carry responsibility, influence, new battles. And God, in His love, is getting you ready, not just to receive it, but to keep it, to sustain it, to walk in it with integrity and endurance. So if all you're doing right now is standing, that's enough. If all you're doing is getting through the day, movement, whispering a prayer, and trying again tomorrow, that's enough. Don't confuse movement. Don't downplay your process just because it doesn't look like someone else's progress. This is your journey. And God is just as present in your silent growth as He is in your loud victories. Keep going. Not because it's easy, but because something deep is being built in you. A version of you that is stronger, clearer, more rooted in God than ever before. And when the time is right, when your roots are ready to hold the weight, the breakthrough will come. The change will happen. The door will open. Don't confuse movement. And you'll look back at this season and realize it wasn't wasted. Munt. It was working. Stay faithful. Even when you feel forgotten, stay committed. Even when you feel stuck, because your roots are reaching deeper and your future is being shaped. Confused movement. You're not just surviving this season. You're growing through it. And that's what makes all the difference. You've been tired. You've prayed. You've waited. You've trusted. And you've kept growing even when it didn't feel like it. Movement. But now comes the hardest truth to carry. You may not always get the answer you expected, but you will always get the outcome you need. That's the part of faith we don't talk about enough. The surrender, the release, the ability to say, God, I trust you even if it doesn't happen my way. There's a point in your journey where to let go of trying, control the outcome, confuse movement. Not because you've given up, but because you've grown up in your faith. Confuse movement. You've come to understand that God sees what you can't, knows what you don't, and loves you far too deeply to let you settle for something that's not in his will, even if it's what you wanted. And that's not easy, because sometimes the thing you've been praying for is something your heart is for. Heart aches for healing, restoration, a door to open, a burden to lift, movement. And when it doesn't happen, how, or when you thought it would, the temptation is to believe God didn't hear you. But faith says, even now, I believe. Even when the mountain hasn't moved, even when the job didn't come through, even when the relationship ended. Movement, even when you don't understand why, That's where peace begins. Not when the problem disappears, but when your soul accepts that God knows best, that his ways are higher, his thoughts deeper, and his plan more complete than anything you could imagine. And when you really begin to grasp that, you stop striving, you stop wrestling with the silence. You start resting, not in the absence of trouble, but in the presence of trust. There's a kind of quiet power in letting go. It doesn't mean you stop praying. It doesn't mean you stop. It doesn't mean you stop hoping. It means you stop demanding. You say, God, here is my request, but not my will, your will. And that kind of surrender doesn't weaken you, it strengthens you. It frees you from fear, because when your faith isn't attached to the outcome, it becomes unshakable. You learn to say, don't confuse movement. Even if it doesn't look the way I hoped, I know you're still good. Even if the door closes, I know you're still leading me. Movement, even if I don't understand this moment, I confusement. I trust that you're using it to build something bigger in me. That's maturity. Movement. That's peace. That's what it means to walk by faith and not by sight. Sometimes God's greatest isn't the thing we asked for. It's the clarity that comes from realizing he's always been enough, even without the answer. It's waking up one morning and realizing you're not carrying the weight of it anymore. Not because the storm ended, confused movement, but because you've learned to walk through it without fear. Because now you know whatever happens, Bubby, you're going to be okay, not because of your strength, but because of his presence. And when that moment comes, when peace replaces panic, when surrender replaces striving, that's the real breakthrough. That's the point. When your tired soul breathes again, not because everything changed on the outside, but because everything shifted on the inside. You didn't come this far for nothing. The pain wasn't wasted. The prayers weren't unheard. God was shaping you in every silence, stretching you in every delay. And now he's anchoring you in a trust that won't break. Don't confuse movement. You're not who you were when this started. And that was the point all along. So keep walking, not because the road is easy, but because the one walking with you is faithful. Keep believing. Confuse movement, not because you see the finish line, but because you trust the one writing the story. No matter the outcome, your heart can rest now. Don't confuse movement, because you've learned the greatest truth of all. Even when you're tired, God never is out.